Hello, thank you very much for coming to this talk. I'm Julia Schnabel. I'm a professor of computational imaging at King's College London, and I'm very pleased to be invited by Women in MICCAI to talk a little bit about my career. And if I say career, I mean actually a work in progress. As a disclaimer, I can't really claim that I've had an initial plan, and I do not really know what I wish I had done differently. Things sometimes just happen in life, and sometimes it's good to just talk about it so others can actually see that a career is never a linear process. A lot in my career has been up to quite a mix of personal circumstances and sheer chance. But I believe that seizing chances at the right moment and seeking advice from the right people has been always helpful for me. So let me just start by where I'm coming from. So I was born in West Berlin in summer of '69, a very cool year, at the midpoint of the Cold War, just before Apollo 11 touched down on the moon. And then for about 20 years, not much happened, thankfully, until I started uni and the Berlin Wall came down. So my first stop was basically my first degree at the Technical University of Berlin, where I studied computer science. And here I'm just showing the title pages of my first thesis and my final thesis. And you can see that already then in the early 1990s, I've been looking at medical image computing applications at edge detection and segmentation methods. I should also point out I've been doing this on the basis of one single CT slice of the head, so n equals 1. So things have slightly moved on from there. I was also lucky enough, I studied fairly fast and well, that I was given a small prize by my university. That was it wasn't much money, but it was enough to pay me a ticket to ride to really think about what I would do after my master's. And this prize was dedicated to support the international exchange of the scientific offspring. So there was springing off. And 1993 was just a couple of years after the German unification. So the job market still didn't look that great. The economy was quite down, quite similar to what we're experiencing now in the current crisis, but only now it's a global event. But there I thought I really wanted to learn more, do a PhD and go elsewhere. So I had been in Berlin for half my life from my perspective today. So I was in my mid-20s and decided that I wanted to do a PhD. And 1994 was actually really a good time to go to the UK, or so I thought. And of course, I went to the heart of the UK, to London. A lot of great stuff happened there. Great music was coming out, great movies. The Channel Tunnel was opened. There was a change in leadership and things started to look up there. And on a smaller note, when I researched what happened in the UK in '94, also a German a low-budget supermarket opened its first 10 stores in Britain. So this was all a good sign. So I went to University College London, which was a beautiful place. It still is a beautiful place. It's in lovely Bloomsbury, in the intellectual quarter of London. And UCL, the computer science department, had a very small medical imaging computing group at that time. Basically, it was just myself and my supervisor, so n equals 2. But that really meant I had some really, really great and very dedicated supervision. And you can see me before and after my PhD viva. So I actually had a really good time there. My PhD was on multi-scale active shape description medical imaging. It didn't have that many more brain images in there. It actually had brain volumes, and the number was n equals 6, but it was more methodological thesis at the time. Right. After that, because my PhD had been on scale space methods, and most of you listening to this don't even know anymore what that might be, I was looking for a postdoc in one of the key groups working in scale space at the time, which was in Utrecht. So just temporarily, I left my partner of now over 30 years behind in London, but we managed to collect a lot of air miles over the course of 1 year. And that was quite an interesting time because a lot of people thought, why would you do that? Why would you kind of, you know, virtually almost split up and go slightly different ways for a year? But I don't think it was ever an issue for us. It was a short hop away. We saw each other every other weekend, and it was actually great fun. It was very good for me personally as well, I think, because for the first time I was living completely on my own. And it was, I think, good to establish also my personal independence after the PhD, which gave me my research independence. So it's something I would really recommend, even though you think you can't do that for a limited amount of time. In a good relationship, you really can. So during that time, in that year, when I was in the Netherlands, a couple of nice things happened. First of all, MICCAI was founded, first MICCAI in 1998 in Boston at MIT. And because I was commuting between the Dutch and the British group, we put together a little five-a-side football match outside the auditorium at MIT. And that was actually the beginning of the MICCAI football matches, which sadly this year are not happening, but are replaced, I think, by virtual online yoga. But I'm sure it will be resurrected in coming years. The nice thing about that picture actually is, and that's has to do with my career, saying that I made really good friends in that time, and those friends actually all made their name in MICCAI over the years. So that, in that picture, you see one MICCAI ex-president, 4 MICCAI former board members or current board members, 3 MICCAI fellows, 3 MICCAI program chairs, 1 MICCAI general chair, and I think in total about 5 professors. But as I said, then mainly for me, they're really good friends. And that's for me what a network should look like, that you start early, start at a young age as an early career researcher and stay friends all your life and all your professional pathway. So after that year, we stopped that's what we call the commuting nonsense, and I started a postdoc at King's College London. That's exactly where I'm now as well. And everybody there at the time worked on image registration. And so did I, obviously. And that was my MICCAI paper here on non-uniform multi-level free-form deformations based on B-splines for non-rigid registration. And it's a very simple paper. I'm not particularly proud of it, but it's been hugely cited. And because I never sent it to a journal, I guess, and it actually came out in the top 10 cited MICCAI papers at the 20th anniversary edition of MICCAI in 2017, but it has been completely superseded by a lot of deep learning papers now. That was my start at MICCAI, really. It was a very productive postdoc period I had at King's. Notably, I had 2 children during that time. And that's also an interesting way of doing it. A lot of people think they have to settle and have a fixed job first, get their lectureship, you know, do their tenure track. But actually, postdoc is a very flexible period. It's a time when you actually can pace yourself, and you usually can go from contract to contract. I was on one long contract, which was renewed while I was there. So that gave me some security, of course, which is important. And my partner at that time became lecturer. I think with child number 1, he became senior lecturer. With child number 2, he became full professor. And I was still a postdoc at the time. But it worked for us very well. Then, you know, by again, one of these chances, circumstances, the groups at King's and UCL decided to merge in 2005 and form a new Center for Medical Image Computing, CMIC, as we know it these days. And we all moved over to UCL. Since then, people have been moving to and fro between these 2 institutions, and I've slightly lost track who is where now. But my original medical image computing group at UCL, me and my supervisor, so N=2, experienced a rather unprecedented growth. So it was quite an exciting time. We all of a sudden had really huge critical mass there. I moved to a different contract by moving institutions, even though we stayed basically the same research group, and worked for round brain image analysis. And here are just some of the MICCAI papers from that time, mostly looking at simulating Alzheimer's, using those simulations to see whether we can actually do accuracy assessments of local atrophy, or generally working on brain subcortical segmentation. This was a collaboration, which was really nice, between UCL, Imperial, University of Manchester, and Oxford. So again, these projects are really nice because you can start meeting a lot of different people at different sites and start building a bigger network. This was for me like my national network. And a lot of these people I've kept working with ever since. In 2007, I was a little bit at the crossroads. So I'd been a postdoc for what, 8, 9 years, 2 kids. I was a senior postdoc, money was okay, but I felt like either I now start an academic career, get a job, a real job, or I completely do something different. It was really about time. And I came across a job ad in a UK mailing list and decided to apply. This was for an associate professorship in engineering science with a subtitle on medical imaging at the newly founded Oxford Institute for Biomedical Engineering with Alison Noble, Mike Brady, and a lot of other great people. And I thought that sounds really good. And I decided to apply. And believe it or not, I got the job offer, which came as a complete surprise for me, actually. And within a split second, when I got the call that I had was offered the job, I said immediately yes. And they said, well, don't you want to check at home first? How are we going to do that? But I was really sure this is what I want to do. I not only accepted the job offer, I also accepted that I would then commute from London to Oxford in total to and fro for 4 hours per day. So normally would not see much of my family. What really helped in that is to be really, really pragmatic. So the first thing I did is getting a commuter bike, one of these little silly folding bikes, which you can take on the train. You can cycle through to the train station. You can cycle at your workplace between, and it actually was a really great help. It's a silly bike, but it got me very, very far. So my normal day at the time was fairly strict organized logistics, which was quite exhausting, but actually and sometimes it just didn't work. Sometimes we were late or I missed a train. All these things usually happen. Normally I would either join the school run by car or do it myself with the folded bike in the boot, or cycle directly from home across London, very scenic route to the train station. I had 1 hour in my rolling office on the train. Then in Oxford, I was cycling between my research lab in the institute, my college, and the department where I gave the lectures. So there was lots of commuting within Oxford as well. Then all the way back, again, my rolling office. Sometimes it was just nap time for me. And then I had to do the school run back or again, cycle straight home. We did quite a good share, me and my partner, who was picking up kids, who was collecting them. It was easier to have the school close to his workplace in London, but it was not too far from the train station. So again, it was a little bit about just getting the logistics right. I once calculated how much I've covered in terms of distances in those almost 8 years. And I think I've been like Neil Armstrong to the moon during that time period. But I think it was totally worth it. I built up a lovely research lab together with Alison. We ran a joint research group. I had really fantastic students there. 3 of the people in my group are now lecturers, or one is even a professor. Others are still trying to become one. Some went to industry, and I think that's the most rewarding thing, seeing how all these people develop and where they end up with. I think that's for me always the key. I had a really, really great time there. But in 2014, a couple of things happened. So it's again about circumstances. I got a sabbatical. So a sabbatical is basically you compress the work of 7 years into 6, and then you get 1 year off. It doesn't happen at all institutions in Oxford. They're really proud of doing that. So I got a sabbatical. So I guess it gave me the first chance to actually catch a breath. I felt always slightly out of breath in all that time. And I did like lots of mini visits. I went to some German groups in that time because it was just convenient. I wrote some grants. I read papers for a change. And I actually took up an offer to visit the group of Ken Mori at Nagoya University. This was for 1 month only, so not very long. And it was, again, a thing I did on my own, leaving my family behind now, but it was kind of slightly synchronized with their Easter break, so they would come in and visit me, of course. And I had to come a few times to and fro even in that month. So again, some more airlines covering there. But I managed to time it well with the cherry blossoms. That was great. And I think this actually helped me to put in my application for promotion, because that's the second thing that happened in 2014, that I was awarded the title of Professor of Engineering Science in Oxford. And basically at that point, I had achieved everything I had set out to do. I had proven myself in Oxford. I had done everything they asked me for. I ticked all the boxes on the promotion form. And I thought I was done. I thought, this is my career. Yeah? Professor in Oxford sounds pretty good on the CV. But life is different. Life sometimes tells you you have to kind of think a bit carefully what you actually want to do. So in 2015, basically, just after I was promoted, I got a phone call from London where they invited me back and to lead a new center for doctoral training in medical imaging. And this was such a tough decision for me. I mean, on the one hand, I would be close to my family and get another promotion in a way. On the other hand, I would have to leave behind my research lab, my people, everything I'd started building up in the past 8 years. And it took a lot of conversations at home, conversations with my colleagues at Oxford, conversations with my new colleagues then at King's. And everybody was surprised what took me so long, because everybody would think that immediately I would take it. And I made it a difficult decision, mostly for me, because I really wanted to be sure that I was doing the right decision. So I swapped my 2-hour one-way commute now with a 30-minute cycle ride. Actually, now nobody is commuting anymore. I'm sitting at home recording this as everybody else. So right now it wouldn't even matter where I worked. But at that time, it seemed to be like a really good deal. And I also felt like, even though my kids were kind of growing up, this was the time when they actually would need me much more, not when they were toddlers, but when they were getting into secondary school and all that. And that opened me lots of new and exciting collaborations with clinicians, because I really embedded in the hospital with academics I actually knew, because some had come over from Imperial, some had come over back from UCL. It's a very volatile environment in London. And I saw really good collaborations between the groups at King's, at Imperial in particular. So I've got a couple of all these 3 grants I'm mentioning here on fetal imaging, on cardiac imaging, on cancer imaging, all deep learning for different imaging applications. They're all jointly between my group, or several groups at King's, in fact, and the group at Imperial. So again, I thought I was done. I had a really, really great kind of happy end, the second happy end I had. But then again, a couple of things happened. And one thing, of course, was this referendum in 2016. And that makes a lot of people, I think, reassess one's perspective and think about, is that it? Should we really stay? Should I stay or should I go, really? And a lot of UK-based researchers, unfortunately, have already started their Brexiters. So a couple of my colleagues, I know people are thinking of it, people are applying. And that made everything all of a sudden a bit more volatile. So the last 4 years have been quite interesting for all of us. The second thing, of course, that happened is this horrendous year 2020 with COVID-19 hitting all of us. So basically, we're all sitting right here in my home office. I'm seeing my group only via MS Teams. We have a Slack channel, we have email. They're all scattered across different countries. Even only half of them, I think, are in London right now. And that, I think, is the second thing which makes you kind of rethink your situation. You start prioritizing your personal welfare, your family's welfare, your lab welfare above certain work matters. There are still really important work matters we need to take care of, but you start kind of reshuffling things. The main problem, of course, for everybody right now is that life and work then start blurring into one another. This is it's a big caveat for everyone, including myself. And I realized that many researchers, especially if they're early career researchers with maybe a small family at home, will be at breaking point at this point. It's the start of term. Everybody is kind of standing at their heads. I'm recording this, I think, at 11 at night. That's the only time I had to do this. Of course, others appear less affected and perhaps even more productive. And I'm slightly doubtful about that, because a lot of people are very good in hiding their feelings and pretending that everything is fine. And those are the people actually I'm most concerned about normally. But we shall see. We hope this will all blow over and we'll all come out of this, maybe not stronger, but at least calmer. It gave us time to reflect. So even though I thought I was kind of settled now in London at King's, my next stop, I hope it's my final one coming up next year, where I'll be reorienting myself again, and I will start a new professorship for computational imaging and medicine at the Technical University of Munich in combination with the Helmholtz Center Munich. I've already sent my partner there in advance, so I'm currently looking after our kids because I still have to go through next year's school exams. But we've already started our bilateral family commute again, now collecting air miles with the German airline. We, of course, didn't quite factor in the pandemic and planning all this, so the travel restrictions are of course, difficult to circumvent, but nothing that isn't solvable. So this will be my final destination, I hope. But to be honest, I've never really planned ahead for a very long time. It's usually, I mean, some people have a 5-year plan. I don't think I have even that. I've always been trying to keep an open mind where possible and embracing change where it made sense. I still always stayed loyal to my previous places, I should say. I still maintain collaborations with Oxford. I'm still good friends with people at UCL and Utrecht. And I think that's also important. You don't just leave everything behind. You just, you leave a trace wherever you go. Sometimes if you embark on a major change, like I've been now several times, it can feel a bit burdensome, sometimes even like a sacrifice and really overwhelming at the start. The workload in the beginning can be really overwhelming. But overall, I think I've enjoyed that there were new challenges, and building up new research programs is always a good opportunity because you've got different collaborators, different opportunities, and that's always good. Change in a way is always good. Standing still is not. So overall, I think my career very much was dictated by a mix of chance and personal circumstances. But I think for me, the most important point was I didn't do this alone. I always had a lot of support at home, from my wider family as well, and also at work, at previous workplaces, current workplaces, future workplaces. And it's important to seek that help, to find that support network, and talk to people. I'm very proud to be a MICCAI mentor as well. So if you want to talk to me, I'm very open to that. So I'd like to thank you all for coming to this talk, and I'm looking forward to the panel. This is just an overview of my geographical destinations, but as I said, it's work in progress. I'm still under development, because you should never stop, I think, developing yourself. Not just on a bit of a personal business. MICCAI this year is a virtual conference, as are all the conferences this year. If you fancy a real one, fingers crossed, IPMI next year will be on a lovely little island in the Baltic Sea, and we'll be looking forward to your submissions and to you attending there. We'll make, of course, backup plans in case it cannot go ahead as a physical event. And the other great news that happened is that together with Tala Bell, Matt Sabunku, Sandy Wells, Mark Niethammer, and Adrian Dacker, we've just launched a new free open access journal. Free means $10 submission fee, that's it. Open access, fully online, and we are looking forward to your submissions, or if you want to do review tasks for us, that's also, of course, very welcome. Thank you very much.